and that is going to be our fireside chat, which is another engaging session today. This is with Jose Murillo from Banorté and Taryn Heilman from Galvanize, who will be discussing how to build a data science team that yields massive ROI. So before I hand the microphone over to both of you, I'd love to briefly introduce you to the audience. So for those of you who weren't with us earlier, Taryn Heilman leads the data science training department for Galvanize and has an academic background in math and astrophysics. After graduate school, Taryn went into the industry beginning with a data scientist position at Oracle. And then Jose Murillo established and leads the analytics business unit at Banorté, the second largest financial group in Mexico. And his group has been recognized as a success story within the data and analytics industry. The group's successes were published in 2018 at the Harvard Business Review as an example of a company which made its analytics investments pay off. Jose is an international speaker at data science and artificial intelligence forums globally, and we're very fortunate to have him joining us today. Having said that, I'm going to turn the floor over to Taryn to get us started with today's fireside chat.
Okay, yeah, thank you. It's great to be here again, and nice to be here with Jose again. So I had a chance to talk to Jose the other day, and I briefly, got an overview of how successful his unit has been. And so I guess I'm going to start off by saying, you mentioned that one of your biggest successes was establishing the central business analytics unit. And what was the driving force for that initiative? And, how did you start? How did you carry that out?
Hello, it's great to be here with you today, and glad to have this conversation with you, Taryn. I guess when we started our journey, that was about 6 years ago. Banorte had been on the market for a bit more than 130 years, and the model upon which the financial group had succeeded and had grown was kind of like getting exhausted. And we were at that point on a downward trend on our profitability. We were behind significant players such as Santander and Citibank. We were the fourth largest at the moment. And at some point, I guess there was this change in the leadership we had. And there was, some of them had the idea that we needed to do things differently and transform ourselves into a data-enhanced organization that kind of like understood much better the customer, and so that we could extend and deepen the business relationship with the customers. And so we started our journey in around 2014, by the end of 2014, the beginning of 2015.
Yeah, it's very cool. So having the right people working on your teams is an important factor, and this is something we've been talking about at this event all day. How did you identify talent gaps on the team and address those?
That's a very good question. And let me tell you that for the type of team that we built, we needed not only for our group to be quantitatively deft, but also, since we're a profit center and we are only the measure of our success is not only to be able to have good ideas, but that these ideas are implemented. We needed that the people that were going to integrate the team would not only be good with their math and understand the way how to process the data, but also be able to build a consensus around those ideas and to have the ability of to make them happy, to be entrepreneurs in some sense. And I guess on the first stage, I was kind of very much focused on my own team, on having the right people for what we were going to do. And something that we discussed, you and I, a bit later, it's not only, I guess now I have a more ample view of who should be the team and who you should be worried about. And it's not only the people in the data science team, but the whole company, and the literacy that you need to develop within the whole company for things to move at a fast pace. And I think that's an issue that you care also a lot. How do you build that data literacy, and if it's something that how you should build it within the company, or if you should be importing it from elsewhere?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because even if you, let's say, go out and hire some data superstars, a lot of times the issue comes down to there are still people at the company who are maybe resistant to change and also just aren't speaking that same language. So I don't think it's reasonable to replace 100% of your company, right? So there's some amount of upskilling that has to be done, and whether that's on the analytics team or whether that's just everybody who's going to interact with the analytics team, so that we can make sure everybody's speaking the same language. And one of the things that we see is really painful is that data teams produce things, and they're producing web applications and APIs and, writing to a database and so on and so forth. And a lot of people are like, well, I want a spreadsheet, and we need the rest of the company to go that 10% to be flexible enough to maybe receive data and receive analytics products in a way that's more modernized.
And I think that the point that you're making, that people that, you have this kind of like disrupting team that it's looking at data and looking at things differently. And you say, well, there might be some resistance across the company, and it's something that it's natural, and it's not because they are ill-willed, but it's basically, and that's something that you need at the end of the day, everybody's like after the same goal, but the people that are running the other businesses also, they have their own ideas on how they can attain that goal, and to be able for everybody to align themselves about what it makes sense. And it's very often that people don't understand, or you don't understand what the other is trying to do. And so there is the natural reaction would be to say, well, I prefer what it's already known, a known path, that going on the unknown path. And for that, I think you're right. You need to, there needs to be a minimum of understanding across the company if you don't want to really to be facing so much detraction in some sense, or resistance.
Yeah, what's been your strategy to overcome that detraction and maybe get your team speaking the same language?
I think that's a good question, and it hasn't been a single strategy, and it's been, I guess, in stages. On the first stage, it was basically by showing results and making quite evident for the people that the type of outcomes that were possible, and that brought several champions to our camp that would be willing to invest their time and resources to push forward and push forward common initiatives. And I guess that carried us a long way, creating that reputation that you were able to increase the yield. And on a second stage, but that was still, I guess, limited in some sense, because at the end of the day, you were pushing the projects that were born within the analytics team, and not there's a limit on the number of people that you have on your team, and although the people in that team already developed expertise on the different businesses, the people that really know the subject matter are those who are operating the business. And there are lots of ideas that can be pushed forward if they challenge their own views. And so the second stage that I think that has helped us to move at a much faster pace, it came from the pandemic. When we were still largely working remotely, it made sense for us to to design workshops to explain to leaders in the different businesses what would it mean to do kind of like insights-driven banking, in the sense that how those insights would be the game changer. And I think that on the first workshop that we did, and we were about almost 3 months joined, about 70 people were getting together and learning about a bunch of different things, from what is the customer lifetime value, what is machine learning, what is a randomized control trial, that kind of stuff, and seeing practical examples of what we were doing. And at the end, for each team to have, we built teams that they would propose have their own initiatives. And that was kind of like a game changer. The second edition of that thing, we ran another workshop, and we partnered with a group of professors close to your heart, Taryn from Duke University, and and we did a workshop that lasted for a couple of months. And instead of having 70 people, we had 240 people, and they were from leaders from lots of different businesses, including not only on the profit centers such as credit cards and retail, wholesale banking, but also from human resources, from fraud, and from other perhaps not that traditional businesses that should be thinking about these issues. And I think that people understanding what you're trying to do has a lot of power. And yesterday we went with the champions of those rounds, what were the best initiatives, and showed them to the executive committee, to the CEO and the president of the board, and they were very encouraging to the teams to be able to present those initiatives. And I think that's, if you were carrying only your own ideas, you have a certain limit. But suddenly, if you have 240 more people helping you in thinking and be able to push forward interesting projects, then you have a big multiplier effect.
So I have two follow-ups about that initiative. And the first one is, how was the determination made which ones were the most valuable that would carry forward? And then as a follow-up to that, how will the people who thought up those initiatives to begin with continue to be involved as they go under development?
Yeah, that's a good question. On the first stage, if I get you correctly, how did we pick the best projects to start and create credibility? And I think it was a measurement of three main elements. It's the potential value of the initiative, but that had also to be with the willingness of the different stakeholders to really help in pushing it forward, and how credible would be those results. At the end, that made us pick the first projects that we conducted were really big home runs. Sorry, I was about to sneeze. And we picked projects to reduce the cost of risk in credit cards, and that had to do with that we found willing partners on the credit card company and the risk department to test something differently. At the end, it was something that it was going to change the way they were being doing things for the past 20 years. And it was something that has also something that it's kind of like nice when you start on, that I found that it was nice on when we're starting this journey, because it was the fact that it was a cost-cutting strategy. It was something that was quite evident and be very easily measurable by anyone. If you say that you reduce the reserve requirements by X amount of millions of dollars, you have the accountants within the company that can come and say, yes, you reduced those reserve requirements. So it's something that it's very easy, there's not a leap of faith in believing that you are getting what you're doing. Instead, when you have revenue generating initiatives, usually those in finance, those initiatives don't mature on year zero. It takes some time for those to mature. So if the initiative was about selling more credit cards, then yeah, but are those people that you're selling more risky, less risky? What's going to be the survival rate of those customers? And I guess how much what will be their spend? Will they be revolving their accounts? And so it's that requires a little bit of kind of like you have to demonstrate much more things to be able to say that you're really creating more value. Not only, you're selling more cards, at what rate they are activating. So it's a little bit more complex. So the fact that we started with cost-cutting strategies, that was helpful. And on my first year, that those cost-cutting strategies were like 50% of the business that or the value that we were generating. Nowadays, it's only about 10%. And on the second stage, that's a very good question that you're asking on those, on following up on those initiatives that other departments are doing. Since we're partnering with them, and that's part of the value that we are creating. We are very interested in measuring if they are successful or not, and if they are not successful because we learned something, and if they are because we have kind of like this shadow budget, and if it's something that another team created but we were involved, it's something that counts on our tally.
Yeah, that's cool. So it looks like we have a question from the audience. And the question is, how do you create the foundations and the momentum within the C-suite? So I'll take a stab at this from the training perspective, and then we'll hand it over to Jose from the actual C-suite perspective. And a lot of times when clients come to us, they are not in the position of having, say, a chief analytics officer or chief data officer. And so as a training provider, we actually prefer to train the executives first. Our data science for executives is one of our most popular classes, and it's for this same theme that we've seen all day, which is this technical literacy, and it's getting the executives on the same page, thinking about things in a science-y, data-driven way, and getting the executive buy-in. And then from there, you might come down to upskilling and training, the analysts, maybe the rest of the company in some data literacy. But yeah, we prefer to start in the C-suite if it's needed for training and get the buy-in there. Now, Jose has already bought into this. So when you're already bought in, how do you keep it going?
I think that you're right. In our case, a lot of the things that were possible were basically because the C-suite had already a buy-in, and we had their sponsorship. So it's kind of like very difficult to start without the decision makers that decide on how much resources you are going to devote to be able to for these things to happen. So I think the part that I would add to what you're saying is basically that even if you have a strong sponsorship from the beginning and they understand what you're doing, if you don't show value relatively quickly, that sponsorship can evaporate quite quickly. So in some sense, what I would think is that I would start from the top, and I would move fast to demonstrate the value, and then you try to permeate those ideas to the rest of the organization. And sometimes it's kind of like melting the permafrost. It might be kind of difficult because everybody's very entrenched in their ways in which they were doing things.
Yeah, and it's generally starting up an analytics initiative, investing in building a data team or training a data team. This is something that requires an investment and some understanding that it will be 6 months, a year before they're showing some profit. How do you convince, convince the other executives, convince other people to make this kind of investment?
I guess by, as I said, demonstrating, and there's a big emphasis that we do in measurement. It's not only that you're able to, so basically you measure before you start a project, and you're estimating the potential benefit that you have. Then you measure the what happened if you made that thing, and at the end of the year, I have a recount on all the projects that we conducted, and what was the value of what we created, and that also helps you focus on more valuable initiatives than the rest. So I think that the measurement and thinking that you haven't finished with implementation of the project, but you need to be measuring what's the real effect. A lot of the buy-in you get, that I found that helps to move really more complicated initiatives, it's to do small pilots upon which, like a randomized control trial, in which you prove what's the causality effects of the interventions that you're proposing. And you kind of like demonstrate what's the potential benefit of doing things, and all the technology that you would need to invest further on for that initiative really to be scaled up. So you kind of like do an RCT with an MVP and a minimum viable product that kind of like shows the potential benefit of some ideas that might be a bit more complex and that would require further investments, and that usually would help you for people to understand what's the importance of the idea, and for you yourself to really understand what's the not to be overly optimistic on your own ideas.
Yeah, so I'm wondering more, maybe, I guess, about the day-to-day life of the people on your teams. What sort of goal set, like what are goal setting and targets and KPIs look like for them? How do they measure their contribution to the overall, organization?
Yeah, that's neat, and that's something that that's a very good question, and that's something that kind of like has evolved through time. At the very beginning, I thought that you would have different leaders within the team that would be measured just blatantly by their contribution to the bottom line. It's, if your project created that much value, then that's your contribution, and that would make it kind of like hard. And it kind of like worked initially, but I guess that kind of like made us not necessarily that, we had a bunch of mini units within the big unit, and so probably that was not the best outcome for cooperation between everyone. That if everyone had their own balance, and so we are now kind of like think it more holistically, and it's kind of like a shared balance by everyone, but everyone at the end of the year, everybody kind of like knows what are the projects that they conducted, and they have to make there's accountability on which were the projects that they conducted, and what was the result. But for example, the people from within the modeling division, so they are not necessarily converting everything into immediately into profits, or the CRM, which it's also within the team, which are responsible of deploying the ideas from the people in experimentation and modeling. Yeah, those are the guys that you would say are the people that are making the cell, but they are powered by the ideas of the other guys. So now everybody kind of like shares the result that we are getting, and but there's an individual accountability upon which projects they participated and what was the final outcome.
Yeah, very, very nice. It's one other thing I'm curious about. One of the biggest problems in the tech industry today is retaining or attracting and retaining talent. So how do you tackle that? How do you keep your best performers around?
That's a fantastic question, and it's and I don't think I have a great answer. Some of the way that it has worked is that we try to be proactive in recognizing the value of each of the team members, and so there's that's something that you kind of like try to do, but to be very honest, there's the financial group has also some restrictions on what you can do, and you're part of the main. You're not an island on yourself, and in some sense, also I don't think it would be a very good idea that you have a group of people that you're that are compensated extremely different than the rest of the organization, because that wouldn't create so much a good ambience among everybody, and so it's hard, and the way that I've thought about it, it's that we are fortunate to attract kind of like the best people in Mexico. We are getting the best students from top universities in Mexico to come and work for us, and what we have done is that the time that takes for a new employee to be productive with us, we have shortened that cycle very fast. The second thing that we have done is that they are responsible, or they own their projects very quickly, and so they are exposed to really relevant issues, and some of these people, they get really good opportunities outside, and I'm kind of like happy for them. And there's kind of like a large right now in Mexico, a large group of people that their first analytics data science job was within our team, and now they are themselves leading different units at different businesses across the country, and sometimes it's very difficult to make offers that will make them keep happy in the monetary sense. A lot of them are growing. I think most of them will stay while they see that they can be growing. And one of the value propositions that we have for a lot of them is that we have partnerships with many great research centers, as your alma mater, Duke, with the MIT, Harvard, Carnegie Mellon, Chicago, UCSD, and they have lots of opportunities to be learning and to be involved in interesting projects that are meaningful, and I guess a lot of them will remain while they see that it's they still have opportunities to be learning lots of things, but it's like the problem of when do you cut a tree, and it's a dynamic optimization problem, and it's at some point people will want to go and lead their own team, and I have great friends who are now doing their own thing at a different firm, industry, and it's something that you need to understand, that they're not, it's the time that they're going to stay with you forever, kind of like it's gone.
Definitely a different world than it was a few decades ago. Yeah, I'm really glad you brought up the learning opportunities. The Kaggle Data Science Survey shows that most people who leave their data science jobs do not leave over compensation. It's over what you described. It's the learning and it's the growth opportunities. And so I think being able to provide those as much as possible is super important for keeping people around. Again, we see this as a training provider. When people get to learn new things on their job, they're super happy and they feel much more, they feel like their employer is investing in them. And so they want to stay. I try to do this on my team as well. I let them have independent research time, and then we kind of get together and present, what people have learned in their independent research once every 2 weeks. And it's a big, this is most people's favorite part of their job. So they say.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. Okay. No audience questions. All right. How long do we have here? 4 minutes. Let's see. What else should we talk about, Jose?
So, what do you think are that's something that you care about a lot, and we kind of like touched on the beginning. So, I have a very particular experience in the way that we built our team, in the sense that the group thought that they needed to bring outside talent to do what we're doing, and it kind of like worked, and we quickly kind of like adopted the corporate culture and kind of blended in. But typically, what do you think? It's what works best? Should you be bringing, and it's we started the conversation there. Should we be bringing, big guns to a company and that works, or you should be scaling up, upskilling your workforce? What have you seen? You're exposed to lots of industry examples.
Yeah, I'm supposed to say that it's 100% upskilling. It's what you should do all the time. I think in reality, it's probably some of both. We talked about earlier, it's not reasonable to replace 100% of your company, because a digital transformation and transformation towards a data culture, that's not just the data science team, it's everybody. It's it's getting the people in HR to be willing to look at a dashboard instead of a spreadsheet. Do we replace the entire HR team, or do we just teach them how to look at dashboards? That's probably the second one, right? Same thing on the data team. You need a combination of skills and the importing people from other places who have seen things done differently. That's valuable. But I think you also need some people who've been around for a while and who have the domain knowledge and know what the big problems are, so that you can get those really, diverse discussions going, and so you can really get all of the viewpoints that are required to come up with productive data projects.
That's interesting. Yeah. And I guess that's a similar question that you're facing when either you build or buy technology. And it's the one of the things that I kind of like, the fact that there are a lot of things that strategically you want to build them within the company, because also that gives you much more flexibility on what you can do. And I guess that'll, at the end of the day, there's also, ideally, you could just go to the market and buy the talent that you need. But yeah, in the market, there's not necessarily also the specific, anyone who, even if you bring someone from the outside, they will need to go through a learning curve on the type of problems that your business is facing and the type of business that you have.
Yeah. And I think most people can do that. That's something we see a lot of is, well, how can somebody who's worked in this other sector possibly understand my problems? And I'm like, well, are you trying to optimize staffing or routing? Are you trying to, maximize marketing ROI? And they're like, well, yeah. I'm like, okay, almost everybody is doing some of, there's definitely different problems in different sectors, but there's so much overlap. So it's a little bit of both, for sure. And Henry is saying we are at time. So I will hand this back to Charlene. Thank you for chatting with me today, Jose.
Likewise, Taryn.